At some point in the history of humanity, my hunch is it was pretty early, we looked up. We looked up, especially at night. We looked up and we wondered, what is up there? What are those lights? What are those little specks of sparkle? What in the world is going on up there? And then after that, we started to ask things like, it seems to be moving, those things up there. Something's happening that one goes to a different spot. Then we really got curious and we started asking, I wonder if we could see those things more closely. So somebody came up with the idea that if you shine up some glass, kind of look through it, that, you get a little bit closer. Then somebody decided, how can we do that better? And they started to work on things like we call telescopes. Started to look at how we could see things more closely and more clearly. And then we thought, let's make bigger telescopes and bigger telescopes. And we'll put them on mountaintops. Maybe that'll, we'll get closer to the sky. And we saw even more. Then we started to see things like planets. And we realized, maybe we're not alone. Maybe there's somebody like us out there. And we got more curious. And we thought, how can we get closer? Maybe we can put people up there. And they'll look. And they'll see even more closely and more clearly what's going on above us. And then we thought, we got people, but we still have eyes. And those are limited. So why don't we put bigger telescopes up there? And all of a sudden we started to see things that were remarkable, unbelievable, things we never imagined could possibly happen or exist. We saw the far reaches of the universe. We saw how amazing creation is, how far back it goes, not just in distance, but in time. We saw things by standing on the shoulders, on the shoulders, on the shoulders, on the shoulders of people in the past. We have been able to see and experience things that we never imagined that we could see. Well, then those telescopes and those space stations, they started to have some issues. So we ended up doing what we should have done in the first place. We sent some women up there to fix it. Right? We're like, this isn't working. Send in the A-team. Right? And can you imagine, from the far reaches of history, with everybody playing their little part, from the first time that we looked up and got curious and wondered, all the way to this past week or so when history was made with two women walking in space and doing some repairs. None of that happened without the ideas and the input, if you will, the time, talent, treasure of many, many people. Men, women, children. None of it happened without people sharing their gifts and making it so. so that we could see things that we never imagined that we could see. It is easy to think that in these passages, especially this gospel lesson today, which we know as, the Beatitudes, it is easy to think that that is the goal. That is what you need to do to be a saint. And that is absolutely soul-crushing. Because it's not possible. Because we are all poor and rich in body, mind, and spirit at one time or another. We are all persecuted or persecute at one time or another. We're all both of those things that Jesus warns against at one time or another. None of us as humans are pure, are perfect, are able to say, well, I never did that. I mean, we might try, but we wouldn't be telling the truth. All of us have our biases and our stereotypes and our beliefs that sometimes fall exactly in line with Jesus and sometimes not so much. Which is a good message for All Saints' Day. You see, in a few minutes when we read the names of those who have gone before us this year from last All Saints' Day, 16. Mary Carson being the most recent just this past week. 16. That's a lot for a congregation this size. But on All Saints' Day, we remember that they were not perfect, and nor are we. But each of them, and I know the families of many of them are here today, spouses, children, relatives. Each of them had something unique to offer the world, to this congregation, to this community. Each of them, as you remember them now, each of them gave this place something, some little offering of themselves, some gift of who they are, who God made them first. And in that way, they are saints. Because they pointed us in those many and valuable ways. They pointed us to what God was doing in the world. I can't give you something from all 16. But one or two. How about Baldwin Day and that voice? A gift to this congregation. How about John Oakleaf showing us what devotion looks like between a husband and wife? That's just two. But every single one of them glimpsed, showed us, and we saw in them something that we can take to help build the kingdom, something that can help us individually and as a congregation to reach for those stars, to reach for something bigger, to reach for something greater, to reach for something that God has showed us and given us as a gift. Something. That's why each of us, while we are still in this place, are called to share the gifts that we have. our time, our talent, our treasure, our testimony, and even our own bodies. We don't have to be all of those things that's in the Beatitudes. We don't have to be perfect. But in those moments of kindness, in those moments of clarity, in those moments of faith, when we are our best selves, we creak open the door just a little bit, and even if it's just a little starlight, from our perspective, God sees the whole picture. Because remember, what just looks like a tiny point of light to us is bigger than our sun in reality. That's why Paul said, now I can see only dimly. Then I will see clearly. So we in this life only see dimly through the saints that cross our paths, who we are lucky enough to sit next to in the pews or sing with in the choir or have coffee with downstairs. But they see now the full presence. They eat now this meal in the full presence with Jesus as the host in their midst. They see it all that we only see a little bit. But by standing on their shoulders, and they stood on the shoulders of those ahead of them, and ahead of them, and ahead of them, by giving thanks for our ancestors, real and spiritual, who went before us, we can remember to give thanks to God for putting them in our lives in the first place. That's how we see the stars. That's how we see through what seems like only a small light in this world, the larger light that is the gift of Jesus Christ. Amen.